I read this yesterday, and I thought, Pat Forde wrote this so he could get on a radio show, I think. I mean, I think this is what he did. He wrote a column, and he's kind of asking about Alabama. How great are they all time here? And I thought, Pat is trolling me, and I bid. Yahoo Sports National College columnist, and Pat joins us now. Well done, Pat. You did your job.
Every column I write, I think with the goal going in, is this going to be good enough to get me on the Dan Patrick?
All right, what did you take away from this? We don't know what's going to happen the rest of the season, but you asked the question now. Why did you ask the question now of Alabama's greatness historically?
After seeing what they did to LSU, that stood out. I mean, I'm not sure LSU is a great team, but it's a very good team, and that environment was crazy, and they totally dominated them. And that's when I started thinking, okay, this Alabama team looks like one of the best teams I've ever seen. And so I, wanted to go back and look at the numbers and see how they stack up. And in terms of just dominance of opponents, they stack up very well with certainly all the undefeated champions of the 21st century and many of the great teams of the last 50 years. As you said, it's early. I mean, it's 9 games in. They got to win 6 more games, but they're on their way.
I'm also wondering, because I remember those great Oklahoma, Nebraska teams, and their strength of schedule couldn't have been very good because, back then, Kansas was horrible. I mean, you had Baylor was horrible. These teams that they sort of steamrolled were horrible. So I don't know if you took in strength of schedule or, whatever kind of data or analytics that you could provide with that to say, all right, strength of schedule for Florida State a couple of years ago was this. Oklahoma in the early 70s was this.
Yeah, I really didn't factor that in. It's hard to say. The one thing that you did have back then, I mean, there was the Big Eight, and they would play 7 conference games, which left plenty of non-conference games, and people played pretty good schedules. Not necessarily Nebraska. Nebraska didn't, but Oklahoma would play USC. There were some really good intersectional games then, more of them probably then than now. I think we could probably look at Florida State's schedule in 2013, too, and say the ACC at that point wasn't great. Clemson hadn't become Clemson that we see now, and the rest of that league wasn't that great. But I think, if you go through an SEC schedule like Alabama's going through and you're just beating the snot out of everybody, you're pretty darn good.
We were talking about the greatness of Tua Tagovailoa. And people are going to look at his numbers and say, oh, my God, that touchdown to interception ratio. And I said, let's pump the brakes. He's probably going to win the Heisman. I have no problem with that. But when you want to compare great seasons, as I always mention, if Johnny Manziel doesn't throw a touchdown pass, he could still have won the Heisman Trophy. He led the SEC in rushing. So you run for 21 touchdowns and 1,400 yards as a quarterback. I think it's the greatest season that a quarterback's ever had, individually. What do you think?
Oh, it was incredible. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he was a special talent. It's sad that what's become of that talent, but
is there a better season? Talent. Is there a better season than Manziel's?
Oh boy, without having figures in front of me, I mean that's way up there. It's way up there. I mean, Mayfield's season last year was awfully good. It's the number 1 pass efficiency season. He could run a little. He couldn't run like Manziel. Tua can run. He just doesn't want to. I think we saw that. He had a 44-yard touchdown through a good defense. He's chosen not to. He's been banged up some, and he's too good sitting in the pocket and throwing.
We had Jim Harbaugh on first hour, and I starting to look at their schedule here. That you have the Ohio State game. If they beat Ohio State, are they going to play? They're going to make the Final Four. Is that a guarantee, you think? Or is there a chance if Georgia beats Alabama, Alabama doesn't drop out of the top 4, but is Michigan going to stay in there? So just sort of looking at this game of musical chairs.
Sure. No, that would be a really interesting little taffy pull if Georgia somehow beats Alabama and you get a bunch of teams there with 1 loss. And you're comparing resumes. Georgia against Michigan. And the other thing, too, I think if Notre Dame loses a game, I don't think they would still stay ahead of Michigan, but they would have the head-to-head over Michigan. Yeah. And there would be an argument there. So If Alabama gets beaten, this thing gets really interesting and contentious. But I'm not sure Alabama gets beaten.
I mentioned the USC situation yesterday, that I don't think there's going to be a change, not because it's maybe not warranted, or it is warranted, but they don't have a school president. There's other drama, lawsuits going on in there. It just feels like Clay Helton might buy himself another year here. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean, I think it would cost a ton to buy him out right now. And as you said, it's kind of a very unstable situation there, and I'm not sure Lynn Swann is necessarily in the, coach search mode, that kind of guy. I mean, we'll see what he would do if it comes to that. It might come to that next year, but I agree. I think Helton gets another year. Everybody likes Clay Helton. They just wish he was a better coach. He has not done a great job there, other than when he had Sam Darnold. Without Sam Darnold, his record is darn near 500, and so he will definitely have a lot to prove next year, but I think he makes it to next year. They can still win the Pac-12 South, for what little consolation that is.
Would you bet that Urban Meyer is back next year?
I would bet against if I had to. I don't think he will be back. I can't say that with any great certainty, but I don't think his health is good, whether it's mental, whether it's physical, whether it's a combination thereof. I think that the melodrama in August took a toll on him. And especially if this season doesn't end well, if they lose to Michigan State and or lose to Michigan, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him step away.
Are the two best potential pro prospect coaches in the state of Oklahoma?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I would certainly say Lincoln Riley is. But you know what? I think the pros really like Jeff Brom at Purdue. I think that he would be an attractive guy. They like people that can do things with quarterbacks. I know you guys were talking about Josh McDaniels and people that work with quarterbacks, and Brom can do that. Lincoln Riley certainly can do that. I mean, what he's done with Kyler Murray has been as good as what he did with Baker Mayfield, and Murray's a first-year starter. So I think those two guys would be very attractive, amongst others.
Good to talk to you. Thank you again, and I'll keep reading the columns and see if you're trolling me to get back on the show.
Every day I'm setting the bar at the Dan Patrick Show.
And that's a high bar. Thank you. Thank you, Pat.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.